All right, welcome back after an off-season hiatus. We are now at episode 103 of the Ricky Henderson podcast, the greatest of all podcasts, the GOAP. I'm your co-host, Alex Espinoza, with my co-host and his co-host. This is Hal and his mini co-host, Jonah, for our YouTube audience. What's up,
Hot
Hal?
dog. Hot dog.
And on today's show, we're glad to bring back Neil deMause. He, of course, runs fieldofschemes.com. He's been covering the extortion of public money for private stadiums for over 20 years now. And we thought, who better to talk about the current state of chaos of MLB than Neil? So we also had Neil on episode 82 of this podcast in March. So check that out. We talk more about his background and everything. But for this one, we just want to jump into the nitty gritty. So Neil, last week, on Thursday, the Las Vegas Stadium Authority met and approved a whole bunch of documents for the A's. We saw that the price tag went up from 1.5 billion to 1.75 billion. What was your overall take of that meeting, and are they making actual progress over there in Las Vegas, would you say?
I mean, they're, I guess, headed in the right direction in that they actually got some documents signed. They weren't documents that particularly said anything, right? It was just, I can find money if I need to. My family's got money. Um, but I mean it's still sort of I forget what the I use on my website, shambles ahead, something like that.
Yeah.
It's still sort of gradually creeping forward. It hasn't stalled out yet. But still, we've got the same question, which is that John Fisher now needs, well over $1 billion. And yes, it's true. His family could sell $1 billion worth of stock and then he'd have $1 billion. But does it make any sense to do that? And he still hasn't answered that question.
Yeah, I feel like one win that I'm taking from this is I'm proud to know that he has utterly failed at finding anyone other than Goldman Sachs, who's writing him an extremely high interest loan or whatever, but really found anyone who's willing to invest with him. So, at the end of the day, if he ends up being able to build the stadium, it's looking like it's going to cost him the absolute maximum amount of money.
Yeah, I can't really think of any examples of sports team owners who have found private investors who are willing to put up a lot of money towards
Yeah.
a project, right? I mean, sometimes you'll find somebody who's willing to pre-buy the naming rights or, something else like that. So, buy a chunk of the revenues. But, typically when you're asking people to invest at hundreds of millions of dollars, they want to get something in return, oddly. I think that I'm not at all surprised this is the way that it's been going. I, didn't expect to see a rush of people wanting to, buy 25% of the Oakland A's at the $2 billion valuation so that they could own a part of the Las Vegas A's, right? Along with a whole lot of stadium debt. Nothing surprises me so far. I'm not quite sure what the end game is here. I mean, like that's the question, right? Is at some point Fisher has to either say, okay, we're breaking ground. I'm, putting up the money for this thing, or he has to do something else. And there's no real deadline, for him to do that. But eventually, it's going to be too late for him to open a stadium even by 2029. Then you're talking about another year in Sacramento. I don't know. It just seems like kicking the can further and further down the road and hoping that something is going to happen. I'm not sure what he's hoping for.
Yeah, that's the impression
Yeah,
I
I mean,
get too. Yeah, absolutely.
what like compared to, I mean, if we compared this to you've seen you followed closely so many more
Yeah.
projects. Like compared to the average project, is this sort of fact that you just submit this documentation saying, yeah, I got the money, I'm good for it, let's keep going. Is that pretty common, or is it uncommon? And are there any examples of projects that have sort of gotten to this point and then still fallen apart?
I think both, I think it's common for, a stadium authority that wants to see it continue to move forward to keep signing off on things and say, okay, as long as you're not backing out, we're not going to back out either.
Yeah.
At the same time, yeah, things fall apart at late dates for all sorts of different reasons. We saw the Los Angeles Angels stadium deal fall apart because their mayor was doing some, allegedly doing some light bribery. We saw just recently the Rays situation kind of seemingly fall apart, although it's unclear how long that's going to happen. Take all kinds of things happen. I mean, that's I always say every unhappy stadium deal is unhappy in its own way, and there are all sorts of different routes that they can take. So I mean, I think the one that probably is most um, comparable to the A's so far seems like Arizona Coyotes, right? Go play in a minor league facility and then cross your fingers and hope that something will work out for a new building. And that did not work out so well for the Arizona Coyotes, who are now in Utah. I have no idea what happens if the Vegas Stadium, if Fisher gives up on the Vegas Stadium, right? Does he
Yeah.
go back? Does he sell the team? Does he go back to Oakland himself? Does he try and stay put in Sacramento? Does he start shopping around for other cities, despite the fact that MLB wants to, keep those open for expansion teams? I really have no idea, and I don't know if he has any idea. I mean, this whole thing really smells like something he kind of stumbled into. Right? He was mad about
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
being as lucrative as he thought, so he was like, "Oh, Las Vegas, that'll be great." And then, he managed to work out getting some money from Nevada and then didn't plan out the rest. Or if he did, he's not telling us how it's planned.
Yeah, because I anticipate that this price tag is going to rise again. I mean, even Steve Hill, the chairman of the authority board, he alluded to that too, that this is going to rise. I mean, as we know right now, it's 1.1 billion from the Fishers, 350 million in public money, 300 million in the loans. But I thought it was interesting. I was reading your blog that even as it's written right now, he would be on the hook to actually put up about 1.35 billion or so, right? And then he would recoup 220 million
Yeah, I think it's
from
something like that.
bonds or something like that.
He's getting
So,
back money in tax breaks. Because it's 380 in actual public, upfront money. But then there's also about 220 in property tax breaks and entertainment tax breaks that he would get back later. So yeah, there's still, but whatever, it's over $1 billion, right? I mean, that's a lot of money to
yes.
spend to build a stadium that holds 33,000 people in Major League Baseball's smallest market, and you still haven't actually proven that you can fit it on 9 acres.
Yeah.
It seems kind of nuts, right? But again, people have gone ahead with other things that seem nuts, and sometimes they've worked out, and sometimes they have completely not worked out. So I really don't know what to predict at this point. I
Yeah.
mean, I would not be surprised with almost any of those scenarios.
Yeah. And another thing I think is interesting too is that if the price does go up, seems like the A's are on the hook for that. Like that's written in the language. That's what Steve
Yeah.
Hill is saying. So I wonder if, I wonder how long John Fisher's going to pretend this fairy tale like, oh, like, oh, it's going to cost 1.75 billion because I think everybody thinks it's going to be closer to 2 billion, right? By the end of the day. So,
Possibly. I mean, we
yeah.
don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. We don't know what's going to happen with the construction labor market. We don't know what's going to happen with an awful lot of things after January 20th, among other things.
And what's the point of no return for you? Because I know that they have to throw down the first initial 100 million, I believe, of the project. Sandy Dean's already out here saying that they've already spent 40 million on the project. So, I mean, at one point, do you say, I mean, could you conceive a way where they maybe throw $100 million down without even getting to the construction phase?
Possibly, I don't
Yeah,
know. I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
really,
So
I
many
don't, I
questions.
don't,
Yeah,
I think anything really is fair game here. And again, it seems like Fisher's goal right now is to just keep all the balls in the air and hope that, somebody
yeah.
goes up with $1 billion check,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is not a great plan. I mean, again, it's possible that he has something, up his
Yeah.
sleeve that he's planning to do, but he does not seem like a brilliant tactician.
Mhm.
So I think it's more likely, Occam's razor says that probably he's just stumbled into this and doesn't know idea where he's going.
At some point, you don't have to be a brilliant tactician if you and your brothers have $2 billion that you've inherited. So, I fear or I kind of assume that still like by far the most likely outcome is that they're just going to end up having to cough up the entire amount of money, and they might have to sell a bunch of stock or whatever. But I think that they've committed to saying, we're going to do this no matter what. There was news reports soon after the final game that Joe Lacob and had put together some package where he said, you can, here, we'll buy the ace from you and we'll trade it for a quarter of the Warriors or something, or all this other stuff. And apparently he just said, no, I'm just not interested. So I just feel like, yeah.
Nobody's gonna come after him if he changes his mind again, right? I mean, he did this with Howard Terminal, where he was like, "Okay, we're doing this," and then he said, "Oh,
Yeah.
never mind, it's not going to work," right? He could totally say, "Oh, sorry, it made sense. Las Vegas made sense, when we first approved it, but now things have changed. It's not going to work. I'm going to sell the team, stay in Sacramento, any of a number of things,
Yeah.
play on a floating platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean." Um, it's really there's no rules here. And yes, he's committed in the sense that he has said he's going to do this, but when it comes time to actually putting up $2 billion, if it's $2 billion, it's a lot of money,
Yeah.
and I don't know if his family's going to be happy with that. I don't know if he's going to be happy with that. And oh, I said I'm going to do this, I guess I got to go ahead with it, is
Yeah.
not really the way that billionaires tend to think, right? It's more, oh, if I don't want to do this now, what's my escape clause? And he has to be thinking that right now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the the only thing I can see that seems smart about this is he was stuck with having to lose revenue sharing if he stayed in Oakland, right? Because they kept going back and forth. MLB kept going back and forth about whether you could play in Oakland, and whether that's a major market, whether you could still get revenue sharing checks.
And the
And
TV deal as well. Yeah.
he's right.
Mhm.
So he's managed to keep the TV deal in Sacramento. He's managed to keep the revenue sharing in Sacramento, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Yep.
And
Yes.
he'll keep that in Las Vegas. So, he can, that's something that he gets as a freebie, but it's still not worth $1 billion, the revenue sharing money. So I really
Yeah.
don't. I can only say it so many times, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what he's doing. I don't think anyone knows what he's doing. I don't know if he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
I think I think that there's I just sort of always sort of assume the worst with this kind of stuff, and one of the ways that I think I understand what they're doing is that they have decided that despite being a really small market, Las Vegas is actually this amazing market, where the Raiders are making all this money from people coming and visiting and stuff, and Formula One wants to be there, and all these other things, and that they actually, they're getting in on the ground floor of, and frankly, like, it sounds like all of the money in sports right now is through, gambling, and the gambling, the gambling ads, and for until Congress decides to, crack down on the sort of all this, all this predatory gambling nonsense that is on people's phones, that's where everyone in sports business thinks the future of their business lies. And California doesn't have sports gambling. It's one of the few states where you can't bet on your phone still, and so there's none of that, and there's all of that in Las Vegas. So I think that's where he was walking around, Wall Street with this $2.5 billion valuation, being like, "Buy a piece of me, baby!" Like, this is secretly the most brilliant, business move anyone's ever made. And you know what? I mean, like, in 10 years, I wouldn't be completely shocked if that turns out to be the case. But I also, in 10 years, wouldn't be completely shocked if they never even open the stadium. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I also think optically it's very interesting that, he cried poor this whole time they were in the Coliseum, and now they're in this small 14,000 seat stadium, including 4,000 standing room seats. And they just signed the biggest contract in, or at least with the player
The
option.
Severino thing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Lou Severino. I mean, at least optically, I just think it's interesting. So maybe it is proof that maybe they're actually going to back up their actions with words this time. I don't know. But I mean, it's only $67 million, not $2 billion. So
And
a little bit different.
and first, a couple of things with Severino, right? First of all, I think the grievance is still going on from the union about them not spending their revenue sharing money on payroll.
Mhm.
So that has to help get that off their back.
Yeah, yeah.
Second of all, You want to put down a parlay, put it on Luis Severino not being an Athletic by the end of next year's trade deadline, right? I mean, if he's any good at all, he's going to be
Yeah.
shipped to a contending team, him and all of that contract.
So this is
Um,
like posturing almost, do you think, huh? Do you think like
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And I think, and or even if he means it seriously, he can change his mind. Look at what happened with the Marlins, right? They built a new stadium. They went out and got Jose Reyes. They got who were some of the other players that they got? Mark Burley. They got a whole bunch of guys. And then like 3 months later, they weren't in first place. And it was like, all right, never mind then.
Another fire
We'll just
sale.
sell. Yeah, fire sale.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, the thing is, whatever teams do when they think they're going to be in a new market or when they, are in a new market, if you look at the long term, right, and not even the long term, the medium term, right, like 7, 8, 10 years, always the payroll goes back down to, something that's corresponds to the market size, right?
Yeah.
Cleveland had a few years where they acted like a big market team because they had sellouts because they had this new stadium in the 90s. And they were really good. And then right after that, they went back down. They're still fairly successful, but they're
Mhm.
not spending like
Yeah.
they weren't bidding on Juan Soto, right? So, they're in there with the Rays and some of the other sort of mid-market teams, mid-small market teams that are sort of trying to compete despite, not spending big. So I mean, the Severino thing, it just seems like an aberration to me. I do not think that they're going to go and, sign a whole of
Yeah,
players and try to compete in the AL West,
yeah.
despite the fact that I don't even know who the leading contender is in the AL West. There might
Yeah, I don't.
be a division with nobody who finishes over 500.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I want to, while we still have a little bit of time, I do want to check in with you on the Rays situation, only because as somebody who followed the A's situation for so long, every single beat, it is the 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 it's same song, different verse. There's this they're on track to do it. They know they've got it done, and then a horrible calamity occurs with COVID. It knocked back everything with Oakland. With this hurricane, it's knocking back everything with St. Petersburg, and this same sort of strong arm. I haven't followed the St. Petersburg situation that closely, but a whole heck of a lot sounds just like Howard Terminal, where they're like, well, we're not out, but we can't afford it anymore. So what are you going to do for us? And they have a little bit of. I mean, they're also going to be in a minor league stadium.
Yep.
If you're a Rays fan, I think there's a little bit more hope, thinking, well, maybe they'll just end up in Tampa or something long term. But I don't know what's going on.
Well, they're not going to end up in
What's
Tampa.
going on?
They're not going to end up in Tampa because Hillsborough County does not have the taxing capacity to build something, which is why they wanted to move to Tampa, right? Stu Sternberg clearly wanted to move to Tampa, but Tampa was not going to give him $1 billion. He finally found a mayor in St. Petersburg who was going to give him $1 billion, between the
Yeah.
city and the county and tax breaks and rent, land discounts. Um, what happened was they approved it, the county approved it, the city approved it back in July, and everybody's like, all right, this is happening. We just got to sell the bonds, it's just a
Mhm.
formality. Then two things happened that nobody expected, right? First of all, a hurricane hit Florida. Who could have expected that? Um, and right afterwards, since it ripped the roof off of Tropicana Field, and Stu Sternberg, the owner of the Rays, was talking about, well, we don't know. We'll have to see where we're going to play temporarily. Officials in Pinellas County were like, well, you're not promising you're going to stay in the county for the short term, but until there's a new stadium built. And, we've got this calamity where we've got lots of other people who've had their roofs ripped off who, need help. We're just going to put this off for a month, right? And it was just we're not going to approve this right now. We're going to wait, come back and take the temperature. What either the county commission didn't realize or Sternberg didn't realize, or who knows, is that there was also, again, surprise, surprise, an election in November. And the two people who were elected newly to the county commission were both opposed to the stadium deal, and it flipped a 5-2 majority for the deal to a 4-3 majority against it. So then county commission came back, and all of a sudden you had 4 people saying, well, we don't want to do this. 2 people who said we didn't want to do this in the first place, and 2 new people who said, well, we're in here now and we want to renegotiate it. So at that point you had, the Rays saying, well, never mind, maybe we don't want to do it at all anyway. Maybe it's too expensive for us. So you've got this thing where, both sides have kind of backed away. And now it's a question of, are they going to come back and try to renegotiate something, a new compromise, and where will that fall? Right? At the same time as the county commission is saying, well, we need more for the county out of, from the team. If the team is saying, well, we need more from the county, because our costs have gone up because things were delayed a month, then maybe that's sort of a angling to say, well, let's meet back in the middle, right where we started. It's kind of what I expect is going to happen, is something where it's not going to be something different from the deal, just because when it's a 4-3 majority, you only have to peel off 1 vote, and that's really easy to do. It's not hard to find one person who, under pressure, to say, you can be the guy who saved this deal, right? Even if people in St. Petersburg don't want the deal saved, right? Doesn't matter, right? You can be the person who can stand up there and say, I got a win-win where the Rays are staying and I got a better deal. And you can be a hero to both sides, allegedly. So it's my expectation that one of those 4 people is gonna flip, but who knows? I don't know them. I've only seen them in one hearing. Sort of talking about, well, I'm not saying I'm opposed to the stadium, but I'm opposed to this stadium deal. So I don't know what's going to happen when they sit down and start doing hardball negotiating and have to face questions about are you going to change your mind and approve it? Because it's only December 17th is when the next vote comes up.
So right now the city of St. Petersburg is on board, right? They already approved to sell. It was about 288 million in bonds, I believe, and then so now they're just waiting on the county, and then is that
correct?
The next step? Yeah.
The city still needs to approve spending on repairing the roof, which they held off on. But I think they can do that. Once the county acts, there still should be time for the city to go and do roof repairs and have it be open for 2027, which is what they're expecting anyway. So yeah, it really is on the county, right? The city also had new members coming in January, and they were like, they put off the vote once, and then they were like, well, we're not going to, those of us who are actually for this stadium deal aren't going to stand accused of, dragging our feet until such a time as there wasn't a majority anymore to approve it. So we're going to approve it. That's what happened Thursday. And we'll kick it back to the county. So it really is, the county and the 4 members of the county commission and, Sternberg and the Rays execs sort of having a stare down at this point. And like I said, traditionally what happens in one of these deals is that eventually something gets worked out with some money sort of shuffled back and forth, but who knows? I mean, we will know more on the 17th, maybe.
I mean, if now there's fewer county commissioners, and they presumably might, they probably know a lot more about it. When I watched the Nevada legislature spend a single afternoon learning about this deal, and their only witness was the A's consultant. They had all this tough talk. They had all this tough talk on day one, and then they went home, and they said, "You better offer us."
It was a long weekend.
Shit.
I remember it was a long weekend.
We're not happy. We're not happy. And then they came back the next, Monday morning. They go, "People of Nevada, you're going to be so pleased. We held out. We have one skybox that is reserved for community use. Yeah. So, we can put in we can, pack in maybe 30 Cub Scouts a game. Pretty good, right? We have,
after the
$700,000 in community money. I mean, now, given they're never going to pay any sales tax or any other taxes, but they are going to give us a few $100,000 a year of in-kind contributions. I can only imagine the bullshit that they can just offer to peel that one vote away.
when it was clear that there was going to be a vote in St. Petersburg to revote on the stadium deal for the Rays, a friend of mine texted me and said something about like, presumably the members of of the council or the commission are, going to sit and go through this with a fine-tooth comb and, try and figure out how much exactly is this going to cost. And I responded with all the laughing emojis. I mean, it's just like look, these I in some way sympathize with elected officials, right? They're not experts in this stuff. They have to learn on the fly the same way as lots of people do. On the other hand, there are people in the world like me and like sports economists and like you guys, there's lots of folks who have researched this. And it's not that hard to send one of your staffers, hey, go read everything you can about this and let me ask some intelligent questions. And sometimes they do try to do that, but the one of the recurring stories is the degree to which, city and county and state officials are really, in over their heads when they're trying to negotiate these deals, right? Because they have to rely on, a few staff and, whoever the city corporation council is or whatever. Whereas the team owner can hire, everybody on the planet to come and, crunch the numbers for them. So it really is difficult. We need some sort of, I don't know, national nonprofit that comes and does best practices help for cities and counties.
In some sense too, that like the deals just the starting point of the deals are so unfair to the local governments, right? Like the answer is you shouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. But when you come in with such an unfair thing, if you're on a commission or a city council and you say this is terrible, there's no amount of sweetening they can do to make to make this turd appetizing. You seem like you're a stick in the mud. You seem obstinate.
Right.
You seem like you're unwilling to negotiate. Where you're like, well, just negotiate. And it's like you're still. Instead of shooting me in the head, you're going to stab me in the stomach. Like
right,
it's nothing to negotiate.
This is where things come in handy, like Seattle's ordinance that was passed by referendum to require that the city get a positive return on its investment from any stadium arena funding, right? And there were all sorts of loopholes in that, right? But the fact that it set out the principle of, okay, we're putting out X amount of dollars, we should be able to get at least X amount of dollars back, show us how that's going to happen. So then you had elected officials who could say, okay, it's on you to show us that that's going to work, right? Because if they had done that in the Rays situation, right, you could easily say, okay, $1 billion, great, show us $1 billion worth of benefits. And, it doesn't exist, right? You could probably cobble together legitimately or semi-legitimately $100 million or a couple $100 million worth of benefits, right? If you sort of, squint. But there's no way you're going to get $1 billion. There's no way you're going to get $500 million. Just from moving the Rays from one dome stadium to another new dome stadium right next door to the old dome stadium, right? Just when you put it that way, it sounds obvious. So it really is just you need to have.
But now 40,000 people are going to come every game now.
Now what?
Now 40,000 people are going to come every game now. Just
right,
like they go to the Marlins.
Exactly right, because suddenly if there's a different dome, then people won't mind driving across those bridges that they've been complaining about driving across from Tampa. I mean, it's just baffling to me. There are certain look. The Giants are a perfect example, right? Moving the Giants from Candlestick to whatever Pac Bell Oracle is called now.
Yeah, Oracle.
I think it's called Oracle.
Whatever the new stadium.
Yeah, Pac Bell.
Sure. Moving it from at the time from Candlestick to Pac Bell, right? Really did make a difference to the Giants, right? I had tried to go to games at Candlestick and get back from games from Candlestick and survive games at Candlestick at night. And, it wasn't pretty. So that genuinely was a step up when you're talking about something like moving, from one stadium not even across the street, it's right next door. It just defies all logic.
And I also wonder if there's going to be some sort of like long-term damage that baseball suffers because of this, just from, pure exposure. I mean, like I mean, both of these, both of these teams are going to be playing in stadiums of about what 12, 14,000 people or something like that. And I wonder if there's going to be brand damage because of that. I mean, I know it's all about a TV market now and everything, but I just wonder if it's just, and then when other teams see, oh, this team's playing, like I wonder if there's going to be any long-term ramifications of like brand damage or anything,
I
or if baseball can absorb it, you
Oh
know?
yeah, a whole bunch of owners seem to think that Juan Soto is worth $50 million a year, right? So they don't think that MLB is crashing anytime in the next 15 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and they're still all making tons of money, right? It's not like this is a some sort of Ponzi scheme where they're losing money
yeah,
and sort of trying to pretend, oh well, as long as we get more expansion teams, then the MLB is making money hand over fist. Pretty much every team is making money hand over fist.
mhm,
I'm sure it'll be both embarrassing and, take cuts out of the profits to have two teams playing in minor league stadiums for a couple of years. And I'm sure they won't let it go on for, for more than 2, 3 years. But again, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it makes that big a difference, I think that, baseball is sort of solidly ensconced as nowhere near the profit-making enterprise the NFL is. They're never going to touch that, but
yeah,
they're also never going to be hockey.
mhm,
So somewhere in that comfortable
yeah,
median.
somewhere for sure.
So, I think for a while I thought, and maybe it was just the cycle of stadiums, for a while I thought, people have started to wisen up. We're not seeing many new stadiums be built. I mean, I guess there just weren't any new stadiums to be built, but, I think the forces of, you know, conservatism of spending money on these stadiums have have started to fail. It seems with Milwaukee, and then it seems like, oh, now the Phoenix, they're saying, oh, we've if I remember a stadium opening, it's not that old, right? Like I feel like, right,
Yeah.
like it's not that old. But my the White Sox. I'm originally from Chicago. So one of the first places I ever vended was New Comiskey Park. The White Sox, and that stadium does kind of suck, but like the White Sox, it seems like they have 1.5 feet out the door of Chicago on their way to Nashville, maybe. I don't know. But
I
like,
don't know, man. That's like, that's Jerry Reinsdorf's modus operandi, right? Is to threaten to go somewhere. He threatened to go to St. Petersburg back when he
that's right.
got the first New Comiskey. So,
Yeah.
is he serious about that? I can't imagine it. Nashville, in case you haven't noticed, is a lot smaller than Chicago. Nashville's even a lot smaller than half of Chicago, which is what the White Sox have now. Anyway, sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
Las Vegas is a lot smaller than the Bay Area,
Correct.
but
Yeah.
so I don't know. I mean, do you think are who's winning? Are we getting better? It seems like at least some cities have wisened up, but they're going to just lose teams like Illinois, and the governor of Illinois has said, I don't think so, buddy. About the White Sox, but are they just going to move? Is Utah just going to take a team and pay, and allow them to take whatever they want?
I don't
I
think White
feel
Sox are.
depressed.
I don't think there's any chance the White Sox are going to move. I don't think that there's really any chance that the Rays are going to move, honestly. Just because the market size matters way too much in baseball. And yes, John Fisher is an exception. John Fisher is also kind of a lunatic and kind of, stumbled into this situation. And I don't think you're going to see teams, moving willy-nilly. The only sport that really saw that was football, and football, it doesn't matter where you play, right? You can literally
It's
play in
true.
Green Bay and
Yeah.
still get the national team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I also don't think that, suddenly all cities are going to start standing up. And I one time made the mistake of saying I thought that the tide was turning because I saw a
Hmm.
few being rejected. That was in 2003.
Okay.
And, needless to say, since I'm still sitting here and talking about it,
Yeah.
that was wrong. And it's just way too much a part of the business model of Major League Baseball and sports in general, and it's way too much a part of just the way that elected the way that governance operates in this country, right? It really is set up to be like, okay, how can we make it easier for whoever the local billionaire is? And until that changes, and that's been a consistent for going on 40 years now. I don't see that this is going to significantly change. I think we're going to continue to see, a surge of no votes and then a surge of yes votes, and the, pendulum's going to sort of swing back and forth. And you might see a little bit more private money going into stadiums, in response to some of these cities pushing back. But again, I've been at this a long time. It's been well over 20 years now, I hate to say.
Yeah.
And I would be stunned if anything major happened to change it right now, or even in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's about I think it for our time with you, Neil. But that was great, and thank you so much because I know
Sure.
we're talking about we were all over the place here talking about a bunch of different stuff, but it's always great to pick your brain and get your perspective on everything. But yeah,
I
I
love
mean,
being all over the place. I got a lot to vent about.
yeah. So I mean, we'll have to see what happens with the A's. I believe they meet again next February, and yeah, we'll see what happens with the financing there. But for now, just going to keep kicking that can down the road. And honestly, the Rays might have it figured out before the A's. So, all right.
Yeah, there's another betting line to have. Who
Yeah.
gets their stadium situation settled first, the A's or the Rays? I would take
Yeah.
the Rays as well.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Neil. Really appreciate it, man. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
Neil.
Take care. Have a great night.
Thanks a lot to Neil deMause again for that great chat. Make sure to go check out his work at fieldofschemes.com. And then me and Hal just going to chop it up and catch up. I was looking, we haven't recorded a podcast since September 29th or something like that, dude. So I think a lot's changed since then. So
a lot's changed a lot. A lot hasn't, I mean, the A's finally decided to spend money. I think that's potentially, I mean, it's not a long-term contract. I saw somebody on Twitter, which I just need to get off Twitter fully.
dude,
I'm
I kind of
mostly
got
off.
off Twitter. It feels great. Yeah, I'm pretty much
It's
off Twitter.
great. It's great, right? Yeah, who
I
cares?
do it when
But
I do
I saw,
research. Yeah, I do it for research, but
right.
otherwise,
I saw some guy, the Las Vegas A's fan or whatever, saying, "Oh, I'm celebrating today," and I'm like, "Guy's never going to play a single game in Las Vegas, and if he does, it's going to be in a different uniform." But, um, yeah, whatever. I think it is what it is, and
yeah, but I'm kind of turned off. Like I'm even thinking like I don't know. Like I don't really. It's not really like I don't really
yeah,
care anymore. I just don't really. It's like
yeah,
kind of like when I
yeah.
saw it, my first reaction was like fuck you, John Fisher, for not spending money the whole time you were in Oakland, and then not even a month later you're spending money. Like fuck that. But so I did care.
If they had a
I
different
did
name
care,
and
but it's
different
also
uniform,
yeah. But now it's
if they had
kind
a
of
different name
like
and different uniform, I wouldn't care at all.
yeah.
But yeah, I really don't care that much either, to
No,
be
but I
honest.
realized it. Yeah, I was pissed off, but it's also kind of like it would kind of like really gave me some closure. Like you don't really give it like this isn't. You don't. I don't have to care anymore. Like there's no. I don't. Before I felt like I had to care. They were in Oakland. Like it was. But now it's kind of like I don't even know if I'm going to do Ricky reports anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing anymore. But
Yeah.
because Ricky reports are a lot of work, and I think I kind of want to do it till the end of the stadium search, but I kind of don't also. It's like, dude, who gives a shit? It's like it's not really. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence, but we'll see. But
I think the things that I'm more interested in are, you know, I've been there was a really nice uh I think a really good idea on a YouTube video from Brody, Brazil, talking about what Oakland needs is a task force, some type of MLB task force, so that when there is an opportunity, the city's ready. And the city, you know, California and Oakland are gonna act slower no matter what than a place like Utah and Salt Lake, so like they need to do whatever they can do. And, whoever the new mayor ends up being, I think it's probably gonna be
Lauren Taylor.
what's
Yeah.
it? Yeah, Lauren. My money would be on Lauren Taylor, right? He was, and frankly, I think if you go through my Twitter long back, I think I said first choice Lauren Taylor, second choice Shang Tao. That's how I recommended people vote in the ranked choice voting. So I think Lauren Taylor will be good. I think he's knowledgeable about the situation because he was on the city council for most of the Howard Terminal fiascos. I really hope that whoever becomes mayor follows Brody's advice and hopefully puts Brody on put him on that committee definitely and get something done.
It better be a volunteer committee, man. Oakland's got no money,
Oh, yeah,
dude.
yeah, it'll be a
Yeah,
committee,
yeah, yeah.
but just to try.
Yeah.
I think they gotta at least try. I was, I had a hope. I was hoping that maybe, you know, 11th hour, the city would try and use eminent domain or something to keep the A's from leaving for Sacramento. It didn't happen. I think that there's a lot of legal reasons why, and frankly, the city was in no position to get it done. You know, uh, I don't blame Shang Tao for really anything that happened. I don't think it's her fault. And I
Yeah,
think
I
that
think it
she
was
did
already
about as
in
good.
motion by the time she got into office. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was tough. I think it was very difficult to know what the right answer was with trying to keep the A's for a couple more years versus Sacramento. Um, I think, had they just said, sure, you can have the same deal, maybe the A's would have stayed. But honestly, the A's are going to sell way more tickets this year than they were last year. And it's not because of they signed Luis Severino. It's just because they're in a new place and these
Yeah,
people
the
don't
novelty. I
hate,
mean, they're
they
just gonna
don't
ride
hate, there's
novelty
novelty
and then they're
and they
gonna
don't,
do novelty again in 3 years. It's like, God,
there's
these
not
fuckers.
hatred.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're constantly making fun of John Fisher for playing in Sacramento, but like, he's going to make more money there than he was ever going to make in Oakland. So it it is it is a bummer. It is a bummer that not that they're I don't I'm not like it's not a huge bummer that they're not in Oakland anymore, only just because like fuck them, they're gonna leave anyway. But like we would have liked them to be in Oakland in case it fell through in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I, maybe I'm giving John Fisher too much credit that he has clearly not earned, but I kind of just think that he's just gonna pay the money to move.
Yeah.
I kind of think that he's just gonna do that. Like, and I've been saying that for a long time. It was when I was, I think, trying to encourage everyone to get, spend as much money as possible to support the Nevada Teachers Union. One source of pushback, I got from people was, it doesn't matter. John Fisher's going to mess this up by himself. And my feeling had always been like, yeah, he is going to mess it up. He's not going to be able to find investors at this ridiculous valuation. People are not going to want to invest with him. People are not going to want to get in business with him. But at the end of the day, he's just going to pay. He's just going to pay the money because he's a fucking billionaire. And that's where I think I'm at with this. Like,
You know who could change this situation one day is a stern politician named Hal Gordon.
that's right. Yeah. Well,
Well, dude, okay, no, but seriously, before we log off, I want to ask
yeah.
because I saw some tweets that you were running for some sort of public
Yeah.
office
Okay.
or something, right? Like, what
So
was
there's a
it?
very strange public office in Washington, D.C. called an advisory neighborhood council. It's like when DC like got when they like got the ability to actually have their own mayor, which is like only in the 70s, because before then Congress ran the city. Um, they still kind of do, but like one of the stipulations was that they had to have these advisory neighborhood councils. And so for every 2,000 residents, there is this person, there's like this small elect. So like the block, some blocks are literally 1.5 blocks, right? The district, if it's a big apartment building. But you know, the place where I live, it's there's like maybe 15 total blocks or 20 total blocks or 30 total blocks, right? It's very easy to walk from one side to the other. It's a 5 minute, 10 minute walk from one side of the district to the other. So it's a very small thing. What happened was oftentimes no one runs to do this job.
Yeah.
And you end up being on a commission with like the six or five or six other little guys in your neighborhood, and you don't have any power, you don't have any money, you just sort of like the DC government's supposed to ask you when they like do anything in the district, they're supposed to ask the council like, is this okay? So it's a very small stakes kind of thing, and so no one was running. And Kelsey, my wife, she went and voted early about 6 days before election day. So she went to vote early and she was like, nobody was running. So I wrote your name in. And then I was like, oh,
Oh, first
well,
write-in vote.
what, I wonder how hard this would be. And then I think I read like an article that made it seem like, oh, maybe you just get 5 or 6 votes, maybe you'll win. And then I found like it took me a long time to even figure out who the incumbent was. He wasn't somebody who was doing a lot of. I don't know what happened, if he just forgot to submit his. I think you need 25 signatures to be on the ballot, and I think he must have forgotten to submit them or something, so he wasn't on the ballot. But he hadn't campaigned, and I was just walking around with Jonah every night because Jonah was, he just like, he wants to be walked around to be quiet. So I was just like, well, I'll just put posters up. So I started running about 5 days before election day. I think half the people had already voted by then. So it was a real last minute Hail Mary.
Last-ditch effort. Yeah.
And frankly, I got pretty close for starting to run for an election 5 days before the actual election day, and probably after 50% of people had already voted. So I only lost 56 to 36. So it was pretty close.
Pretty good.
Not bad, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I want to keep sort of being involved in local politics. I think partly just learning so much about how a terminal and how it worked and how it affected city government and stuff, I think I have an itch for local government. I would like to keep doing that. So, I'm in DC now, so we'll try there. When Oakland gets another MLB team back, and I come back to Oakland, then maybe I'll take Oakland by storm. But we'll see. We'll see. It was an interesting
fun
week.
experience, huh? But you said you're going to run again
Yeah.
next cycle, right? Yeah.
Well, maybe. Yeah. And I'll actually try and do it for real,
Yeah. That's
actually
awesome,
get on the ballot.
dude. That's hilarious.
So we'll see.
That's
I
great,
mean, it is in some sense, what was nice is realizing, oh, thank God I don't actually have to go to these meetings and respond to all these emails for a phony baloney position
yeah. It's just kind of like
it doesn't pay anything
yeah.
and has no real power. So, I think in some sense bullet dodged.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, dude. Well, yeah, I just wanted to catch
All
up,
right.
see how things are going. But all right, man. We'll see you soon. Good luck with the Jonah. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll see you next spring
Alex,
at a Ballers game or something. So
good luck in Mexico.
thanks, dude.
We'll do this. I think we'll do this maybe every couple months if there's any more updates.
Yeah, next time there's some news, but yeah, I don't think. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of like my passion really died when I saw the Severino thing. I was like, I was mad for a minute, and then I was like, okay, it's not my
All
shit
right.
anymore. So yeah,
I will see you.
See you, man.